Imagine a once solid alliance fracturing under the weight of heated accusations and unilateral decisions. Could this be the tipping point for U.S. Colombia relations? Dive into the escalating drama as former President Donald Trump takes bold steps against Colombia, a longtime partner in Latin America, amid bitter disputes over the drug trade. But here's where it gets controversial. Are these measures a tough stand on narcotics or an overreach that undermines global diplomacy? Let's unpack this story step by step, breaking down the tensions in a way that's easy to follow, even if you're new to international politics. Picture this: supporters of Colombian President Gustavo Petro waving Palestinian flags at a rally in Ibagué on October 3, 2025, as he addresses the crowd. This snapshot captures the charged atmosphere in Colombia, where political fervor often intersects with global issues. Now shifting gears to Palm Beach, Florida, where Trump escalated tensions by declaring on social media that the U.S. would drastically reduce aid to Colombia and impose tariffs on its exports. His reasoning? Colombian leader Gustavo Petro is failing miserably to curb drug production, earning the label of an illegal drug leader who is low-rated and very unpopular. Trump didn't mince words, warning Petro to close up drug operations himself, or risk the U.S. stepping in forcefully. Later that day, speaking to reporters on Air Force One, Trump doubled down, portraying Colombia as a machine churning out drugs with no fight against drugs and a lunatic at the helm. He hinted at announcing new tariffs the following day, a move that could hit Colombian goods hard in international markets. For beginners wondering what tariffs mean, think of them as extra taxes on imports that make foreign products more expensive, potentially boosting U.S. industries but hurting exporters like Colombia's coffee or fruit producers. This isn't just talk, it's a potential economic jolt that could ripple through global trade, affecting everyday consumers by raising prices on familiar items. Adding fuel to the fire, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth unveiled details of a recent U.S. strike on a vessel allegedly loaded with narcotics. He claimed it was tied to the National Liberation Army, ELN, a Colombian rebel group at odds with Petro's government. While no evidence was provided publicly, Hegseth shared a short video of the boat exploding in flames after Friday's incident. This kind of action highlights the U.S.'s aggressive approach in the region. But for those unfamiliar with the ELN, they're a long-standing guerrilla force that has battled the government for decades, often accused of various crimes including drug ties, though they deny it. Petro, no stranger to fiery social media exchanges, much like his U.S. counterpart, fired back swiftly. He rejected Trump's claims, arguing that his administration is actively combating narcotics, especially since Colombia is the world's top cocaine exporter. Trying to promote peace in Colombia is not being a drug trafficker, Petro posted, suggesting Trump might be misled by his advisors. He positioned himself as the main enemy of drugs in his nation and called out Trump's stance as rude and ignorant toward Colombia. To clarify for newcomers, promoting peace here refers to Petro's efforts to negotiate with groups like the ELN, a controversial strategy that aims to end decades of conflict, but has drawn criticism for potentially weakening anti-drug efforts. And this is the part most people miss: the sovereignty showdown. Colombia's foreign ministry slammed Trump's remarks as a direct threat to national sovereignty, essentially accusing the U.S. of proposing an illegal intrusion into Colombian territory. Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez emphasized that Colombia has deployed all its resources, even sacrificing lives in the fight against drug trafficking. This back and forth underscores a deeper debate. When does one nation's fight against drugs justify actions that could be seen as interfering in another's affairs? It's a gray area in international law that sparks heated opinions. Some view it as necessary cooperation, while others see it as imperial overreach. Trump's aggressive posture could signal wider ripples across Latin America, where the U.S. has already ramped up pressure on neighboring Venezuela and its leader, Nicolás Maduro. U.S. naval ships, fighter jets, and drones are active in the area, framed by the administration as an armed conflict with drug cartels. Trump has even greenlighted covert operations inside Venezuela. In contrast, Colombia has been a key ally for years, receiving the lion's share of U.S. aid in the region. But despite this partnership, coca cultivation hit record highs last year per United Nations data, and rural violence has flared up in areas once plagued by insurgents, even after a historic peace deal a decade ago. For context, coca is the raw material for cocaine, and its surge points to ongoing challenges in eradicating production. Factors like poverty and lack of alternatives make it a tough nut to crack. Back in September, the Trump administration accused Colombia of non-cooperation in the drug war, though they temporarily waived sanctions that would have slashed aid. Colombia pulled in about $230 million in U.S. aid for the budget year ending September 30th. A notable dip from past years when it topped $700 million, according to U.S. figures. This funding drop highlights how political spats can translate into real dollars, affecting everything from military training to community programs. Petro, Colombia's inaugural leftist president, has clashed repeatedly with Trump throughout the year. It started with Petro's refusal to allow U.S. military flights carrying deported migrants, prompting Trump to threaten tariffs. Then the State Department revoked Petro's visa ahead of his UN General Assembly attendance in New York, citing his call for American soldiers to defy Trump's directives. They've also disagreed over U.S. strikes on Caribbean boats. On Sunday, Petro leveled accusations of assassination, citing a September 16th incident that killed Colombian fisherman Alejandro Carranza. Petro claimed Carranza had no drug links and his boat was simply broken down when struck. The United States has invaded our national territory, fired a missile to kill a humble fisherman, and destroyed his family, his children. This is Bolivar's homeland, and they are murdering his children with bombs, Petro posted, referencing Simón Bolívar, a key figure in Latin American independence. He urged legal action internationally and in U.S. courts. The White House and Pentagon haven't responded to these claims yet, leaving room for debate. Interestingly, despite the criticism, Petro's government plans to prosecute a Colombian survivor from a more recent U.S. strike on a submersible suspected of drug transport. Another survivor was sent back to Ecuador, where authorities decided not to charge him after determining he hadn't committed crimes there. This selective approach raises eyebrows. Why prosecute some but not others? It could be a nuanced balance between justice and diplomacy, but it fuels the controversy over U.S. operations. The ELN, targeted in Friday's strike per Hegseth, has long denied drug trafficking involvement and offered to face international scrutiny. They didn't comment on the announcement, but Colombian officials frequently report busting cocaine labs and seizing drugs linked to such groups. Since early September, the U.S. has conducted 7 strikes in the region, claiming to target drug traffickers and resulting in at least 32 deaths. Trump griped that Petro has a fresh mouth toward America and that drug smuggling persists despite large-scale payments and subsidies from the USA that are nothing more than a long-term ripoff of America. As of today, he declared, these payments, or any other form of payment or subsidies, will no longer be made to Colombia. But here's where it gets really divisive. Is cutting aid a smart strategy or a reckless gamble? Elizabeth Dickinson, a senior Andes analyst at the International Crisis Group, called it befuddling and profoundly unwise to alienate Colombia, America's strongest military ally in Latin America, especially as tensions with Venezuela simmer. She noted that the U.S. and Colombia have always seen their bond as fundamental, but that wisdom is being thrown out the window with really catastrophic effects. Colombia already suffered big funding losses when Trump cut the U.S. Agency for International Development earlier this year. Further reductions could cripple military ties and weaken fights against rebels. If that is cut, we will see a strategic loss of capability for the Colombian military and police at precisely the moment when they're confronting the greatest security crisis in Colombia for over a decade, Dickinson warned. This expert insight paints a picture of potential chaos. Without U.S. support, Colombia might struggle to maintain peace and security, leading to more violence or even spillover effects into neighboring countries. For example, imagine a scenario where weakened Colombian forces allow drug cartels to expand, affecting global supply chains and even U.S. streets. Though critics of aid cuts might argue that Colombia should handle its own issues without strings attached. In wrapping this up, Trump's tariffs and aid halt represent a bold pivot in U.S. foreign policy, but they come with huge stakes. Is this a necessary crackdown on drug lords, or a short-sighted move that could destabilize a key ally and embolden adversaries like Venezuela? What do you think? Does Petro deserve more leeway in his peace-building efforts, or is Trump's tough love the right approach? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you agree that sovereignty trumps, pun intended, international pressure, or disagree that aid should be conditional? Let's discuss.